In practice, when you are trying to get the team to work productively within this environment that's very different from a traditional sales motion, what do you do? Well, first of all, because of what we just talked about, it takes time. You might have a bunch of conversations that are really about figuring out what's happening in that organization with your product. You probably need to change some of the metrics and things that you tie rewards to. So, for example, switching to conversations versus conversions. You may not have any significant conversion, especially in the first phase of the process, but you might have some meaningful conversations. So meaningful conversations could and should become a fundamental KPI as you manage the sales team throughout this process. The other thing is expansion MRR versus new business MRR. Again, there's not going to be one, in most cases, there's not going to be one big initial sale. You're going to have a ton of small conversions initially, and then if you're doing the job right, and if you have product market fit within that organization, you're probably going to see expansion MRR, right? The revenue, the growth tied to that account because of that patient work that these advocates, these consultants basically are doing with that customer. So switching from new business revenue to expansion revenue is probably going to be a good idea as well. And finally, to be able to really help the sales team assist the customer in that process, you're going to need a bunch of data. You're going to need the right applications. You need to give them context so that when they reach out, they have the right information about how they're using the product, who these people are within the organization. And so the data requires probably an investment in revenue operations, right? People that are making sure that the data is correct, the tools are correct. And of course, a tool like Breadcrumbs helps you with that, figuring out models to prioritize the people that you need to talk to. And when you talk to them, have an understanding of what you need to talk to them about. So revenue operations, for example, for us, it's a constant investment and a struggle because, as you know, there's so much data that's spread throughout your organization in terms of product analytics, demographics data, etc. So it requires an investment in time, in people, in dollar amounts, and it needs to be coupled with the other priorities that we just talked about to hopefully set up a team that can deliver on this. Again, in PLG, very likely, unless you choose to be completely self-service, you're going to have a different sales team, and you're going to have a sales team involved. But it's probably going to be a very different kind of selling, and hopefully, I give you, some pointers on that. Yeah, what do you think?
I think you are so right, and I think it's been a theme. A couple of people have talked about this. Jason Reichel was on here talking about how the notion of a repeatable sales process is no longer a thing, and I think that was a really catchy way of saying, hey, like the role of a seller, of an AE, has fundamentally changed, and we're back to this. It's funny with everything that's new, everything that's old is new again. We're very much back into like, hey, a consultative sale, like a meaningful connection at like every part of the customer journey. And anyways, that's how I interpret it. One, I wonder if you agree. And two, I think, how do organizations help sellers transition into that role?
Yeah. So, yeah, totally agree. It's really consultants more than salespeople, because once you acknowledge that if you've chosen this path, right, you've chosen because it's a good fit for your business model to go the PLG route, then you're not dealing with prospects, or at least not in the traditional way. You're dealing with people that are already using your product. Sometimes they've been using it for a long time. They may know a lot about your product. And so how do you help it? First of all, you need to help the sales team become very proficient in your product. One of the ways is, get them to use the product. For example, we try to do that at B quite a bit. We actually have our sales team use our visual builder to create proposals for clients. So they actually use our drag and drop builder to create proposals that they send to their contacts. Yeah. So they are actually using the product themselves. And so that's for example, piece of advice that I definitely recommend.
No, that's a great piece of advice, right? Like, them being intimate, and obviously it gets more difficult depending on what kind of solution and how big the solution and how technical the solution, but like getting sellers to like understand what the solution is, and more importantly, be able to like empathize with the pain or what the prospect or customer is trying to solve. That's just fundamental good sales, right? Totally. But I think the key takeaway for me, and I would just want to make sure that I'm reiterating this correctly, is that it's this idea of 3-dimensional thinking. PLG is not a simple concept, right? Like PLG doesn't mean no salespeople. It doesn't mean no SDRs. It doesn't mean no lead stages. It just means, hey, like you have a whole other set of signals to work with, and you have a whole other way to engage and incentivize and interact with your customers or potential customers.
Absolutely. In fact, that quote that I put at the end of the slides by Jason Lemkin is exactly about that. Even if you are a PLG company, unless you choose to basically say, look, even if you are a larger company, I do not want to talk to you. I chose to just stay completely self-service, which is very, very rare. But unless you do that, then at some point you're going to have a sales team. And that sales team is a very different sales team. Comes in much later in the process, has to be very patient, very curious, as you said, understanding what problems, the product is fixing. And of course, then, the traditional stuff comes in with security reviews and contracts, et cetera, but in a different way, much later in the process. Yep.
That's amazing, Massimo. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciated the topic. It really resonated with me, and I'm sure it did with many people in the audience. If anybody wants to dig in further on this topic with you, how do they get in touch, Massimo?
Yeah. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there, so happy to share more if I can. Yes, let's stay in touch. It's an evolving topic. We're learning every day ourselves.
Amazing, Massimo. Thank you so much. Everyone, thank you for joining. This is our last official session, but please jump onto stage 1. Armando is going to be wrapping it up. Hope everyone had a blast. I certainly did. Massimo, thanks again.
Thank you, Gary. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye. Bye.